Good morning, everyone.
Good morning,
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Today's class, we will be looking into the concept of doc strings. What is the purpose of the doc strings? I hope you remember in the syntax of the function declaration and definition. Let me go to that slide. So here you can see that in the body of the function, the first statement that I have written is documentation string. You need to create a documentation string is for enhancing the readability of your code. So if somebody is looking at your code, they will be knowing what is the purpose of this function. So in this class, we are going to see how to create this documentation strings. You create the documentation strings, and then I'll tell you how to access the documentation strings. So this is the function. I have a function over here, and this is a comment. Okay, I have hash and then doc strings. That is the comment. Function, we are just summing up x and y. Okay, so that's the function. I have created the doc strings. How I created, I just gave a string below this function, wherein I created the string using 3 quotes or 2 quotes or 1 quote. I can create it however I want according to the rules of how you create the strings. Follow the rules of how you create the string. In the same manner, you will be creating some text inside your function. So here, which describes the functionality of the function. So here I have written some function adds 2 numbers and returns the results, and I have written it in multi-line. So I have given multi-line string quotes over here. So that's it. I don't need to do anything. I just have given some multi-lines, and how I give strings, I just gave it in that manner. And I have written the description about the function, that this function is summing up 2 numbers and all that, and it is returning the result. So I said like there is a return also from this particular function. And then I just summed it up. Okay, fine. I just did some operation here. I called the sum function from the print statement. And this is important. Okay, so now how I'm accessing the doc strings. This is how I create the doc strings and how I access the doc strings. Accessing the doc strings, the syntax is function underscore name dot underscore underscore doc underscore underscore. So here, if you want to access the docs of some function, I have to give the name of the function. So I said sum dot 2 underscores double underscore doc, and then I'm saying 2 underscores. So when I do it, if there are any doc strings, it will just display the doc strings on the screen. That means the description of the function. So the description of this function is given in the output. So is it clear with the doc strings, everybody? How to create the doc strings and how to access the doc strings? Not only for the user-defined functions, you can also access the doc strings for the built-in functions. Because built-in functions are the functions which come along with the language. So you haven't written them, right? Somebody else have written the code and you want to use that functionality inside your application. So you want to know like what that function is all about. So to access the built-in functions also, you will be using this syntax. Okay, what I did here is I have taken the built-in function. So print is a built-in function. So I want to see what the doc strings of this particular print function. So I just used the syntax I already told you, like it is print is the name of the function, dot double underscore doc and then double underscore. So when I have written, so I got all this stuff. This is the doc strings that they have written in the print function. So you can see like all the description it is showing. This is how you access the doc strings, create the doc strings and access the doc strings of both the user-defined functions and the built-in functions. Now let us take a look into how to swap 2 numbers inside a function. So this is a very common problem we have been seeing from C language, wherein swapping 2 numbers is an interview question also. How efficiently you swap the numbers. So this shows your logical capabilities. In Python, it is a very simple task. because the programming language comes with so many features that swapping a number is not a difficult task. So you can see here that I have taken two values from the user. One I have taken in A and the other I have taken in B. Then I am printing. So I have a print statement over here. So wherein I am printing A and B before swap. And call to the and goes to the swap function. So this is the swap function. I have taken A to be 55 and B to be 77. So here in A, okay, in the formal argument A, there is 55, and in the formal argument B, there is 77. Now what I did, I didn't do any logical operations like taking in a third variable, or else doing some mathematic operations like A plus B and putting it in A minus B and putting it in B. I didn't do all that kind of operations. I just made use of the concept of returning multiple values and assigning multiple values to some variables. So all that concept I have used. You can also do it in your own logic. This is how I have solved this. So I said return B comma A. So what happened? I just have passed 77 and 55. Okay, now this is returning. So the swap function is returning multiple values, and the multiple values are first is 77 and then 55. Now what will happen? This assignment operator will assign the values according to their positions. So 77 and 55 are here. So 77 will go into A and 55 will go into B. So after swap, you can see that A is having 77 and B is having 55. So this is the swap function wherein I'm swapping two numbers by making use of functions concept. So I hope this program is clear to everyone. Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
What is the output of this program? Function and default, first print statement and the second and the third. Yeah, okay. Question was given in the placements.
10, ma'am.
For the first print statement, it is 10. Okay, then
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, and then
A. 10, A, ma'am.
so it is A. Okay, fine. This is the answer. You went wrong. To call to the extend list. So this is the function, right? So extend list is the function, and extend list is taking two arguments. Now take a look at the arguments. The first is in and the second one is a list parameter. Now you can see that I didn't simply say list. I said list is equal to something. What is this argument over here? This argument is nothing but a default argument, because I'm giving some list over here. It's even if it is an empty list or whatever, I have given some list over here. So I said list is equal to something. So whenever you have such kind of parameters inside your function, you call them as default arguments. I have explained to you this concept when I was discussing the default arguments. So here, this is a non-default argument. The first one, val, is a non-default argument, and this list is equal to something is the default argument. So whenever you are not providing any argument, okay, so what it does, it will take its own default argument. So in the first function call, so I said extend list and I just passed 10. I didn't pass any list here. So what it will do is it will give 10 to this particular val, and this list will be the default list. It will take the default list because I didn't pass the number of arguments as it is mentioned in the function. So there should be two arguments, but I just passed only one argument, which is 10. So now what it will do is it will take a list, append this 10. Okay. So list dot append val. Okay. So 10 will be appended. Now see here, the important concept is 10 is appended, and in the next function call, let me just pause here, and I'm not telling about what it is taking into the list one. Let me explain you this one now. In the next function call, what we are doing is here it is taking list one is getting 10 only. Okay, so till there you are correct. You people are correct. Now I'm making another function call. So here I'm passing two arguments. The first argument will be taken into val, and then I already have given the list over here. So what it will do, I am passing two arguments. So 123 will be taken into val, and this empty list is considered. It won't take this default list. The default list is having 10, right? So it is already having 10 in it. Now it doesn't take the default list. Now what it will do is it will take this empty list. Now for the second function call, it is returning 123. Okay, well, fine. Now coming to the third function call, I said I'm passing only one argument. So this one argument is taken into this val, but we already have a default list, which is a local into this particular extend list function. So already 10 is there. So what it will do is it will append this A after this 10 into this list, because I want to consider the default list. I didn't pass the second argument over here. Okay. Now after appending, I am trying to print over here the values of list 3. Now as soon as this function has taken place, this operation have taken place, there is a modification in the list. This was list, right? And lists are mutable. Lists are mutable. So what happens? This list will no longer exist. This list will exist. And what happens is when I am trying to print this list, it will be printing 10, A for this list 1 also. Because the list has been changed in the previous statement itself, there is some modification done to the list. So we are saying that list is mutable. This is what is a concept of mutable. Whenever you're making the change, it reflects. After this change, I am trying to print list 1. So that's why it is giving me 10, A for list 1. And this is because I have passed the list over here. So it won't take the default list. So it is giving me 123. And the last one is appending to the already list that is there in the function. Is this program clear now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Now moving on to the very important concept of functions, which is recursion. There are two ways of solving a problem. One is through iteration, or other one is through recursion. So we generally solve a problem either putting it in a loop or either going with recursion. So what is recursion? Recursion is calling the same function again and again, not calling other function. We are calling the same function again and again. So generally for the recursion definition, we say that function calling itself is called as recursion. Okay. Now what is the purpose of having recursion in your program? The purpose of recursion in your program is to solve the big problem. Okay. So say you're having a very big problem and you want to solve the big problem by dividing it into smaller problems. This is one technique of algorithm. Okay, so to solve the problem, what you do is you write algorithms. The algorithms can be written in any of the fashion. It can be dynamic programming, or it can be greedy approach, or it can be recursive approach, which is divide and conquer. So there are different algorithm strategies. You can solve the problem in any one of the strategies. But what we finally do is like we solve the same problem in different approaches of the algorithm, and finally compare them and say that this problem can be better solved using dynamic programming, or this problem can be better solved using recursion. So that is the conclusion we generally give. For example, recursion, the normal binary recursion. So all these are the variants of the recursions, which you will be learning with how you are using recursion in Python. Two major cases whenever you are giving solution for the recursion program is the base case. And the second thing that you need to do is the recursive call. You cannot directly make a recursive call. without the base case. If you directly do a recursive call, your function will get into an infinite loop. So it will call the function again and again indefinite times, and that is not good programming. So whenever you're writing a recursive solution, you need to keep this point in mind, that you need to give the base case. You have a array condition, or you say that it is a base case. Different textbooks have got different terminology for this. We generally say that it is a base case. This is the most used terminology. So this base case means that you will be giving the breaking condition for this particular recursion. There should be somewhere, like there should be a stopping for this particular loop, right? So you're calling the same function again and again. So there should be a point where you want to end this recursion. So the breaking condition you will be giving in the base case, or breaking the bigger problem into the smaller problem. Each time you make a recursive call, you will be calling the smaller problem. You will be dividing the bigger problem into smaller problem, and the recursive call is made to the smaller problem. So every time you do that, and the problem becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, and finally it comes to a point and where you just don't want to further divide the problem, you will use this base case. Say for example, I want to find the factorial. So let me get into that example, because you already have seen the factorial problem. Okay, just look into this recursive function wherein I want to call the factorial 5. So this recursive factorial solution you might have seen in your C programming. Do you know this program? Have you learned it in your C programming?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you are familiar with this. So I have chosen this to make you understand what is the recursive function. So this is the function name. So I have written a function which is factorial, and initially I am passing n is equal to 5. Now what happened as soon as I passed n is equal to 5 is, I am making a call. So this is what I have written in the program. So I have written n into factorial n minus 1. So this is the code we generally write, right? So I said n into factorial or fact or whatever, and I'm saying n minus 1. What I did here is I am calling the recursive function on the smaller problem, because I don't know, I can't solve the bigger problem. So the bigger problem is finding 5 factorial. So I can't give the solution for this 5 factorial, because according to the mathematical, and then I need to find out the 4 factorial. So to find the 4 factorial, I need to find it becomes 4 into 3 factorial. So I need to find the factorial of 3. Then to find the 3 factorial, I need to say 3 into 2 factorial. So I need to find the solution for the 2 factorial. So again, for finding the 2 factorial, I need to call the 1 factorial. So will I be calling 0 factorial, and will I be calling minus 1 factorial and all that? Or do I need to stop it at this particular point? Do I need to call it further? Do I need to call on 0 factorial to find 1 factorial? Do I need to call the 0 factorial? Anyway, 0 factorial is 1. 0 factorial is 1. After calling 0 factorial, do I need to call minus 1 factorial? Or
No,
do I need to stop it there?
we have to
I need
stop
to
it there.
I need to stop it there. I need to stop it there. So I know that I have to stop at that particular point. Where I need to stop? I need to stop when n becomes 1. When n becomes 1, I need to stop. So what will happen this when n consecutively, it reduces its value. We are writing the logic in such a manner. Okay, so we are reducing the problem. N is reduced to 4, then again it is reduced to 3, then again it is reduced to 2, then again it is reduced to 1. So when it is reducing to 1, I want to stop it. Okay, so that will become my base case. Everyone, did you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
When you want to stop your recursion, the stopping condition or the breaking condition of your recursion, you will be giving it in your base case. Fine. So what I did here, so I passed 5. Now what I'm doing, I'm saying return 5 into factorial 4. Now I made a recursive call. So this is a recursive call. So this is a recursive call. And after making a recursive call to 4, what is happening? Again, it is checking whether n is equal to 1. So 4 is not equal to 1. So further it will go into the next recursive call because 4 is not equal to 1. So it goes into the next recursive call. So what is happening? 4 into factorial 3. Now I'm calling the factorial on a different value of n, which is 3. Here I have called with 4. Now here I'm calling with 3. So now what happens? Again, to solve this factorial 3, I'm calling again 3 into, I am saying factorial 2. I'm calling it on a different function. Okay, I'm calling on the same function with a different value of n. So here the value is 2. So again, I'm calling the factorial function for 1. So now it encounters the breaking condition wherein I'm saying n is equal to 1. So there I will be writing return 1. So in this particular base case, I will be saying return 1. So what will happen? 1 will be returned to this particular call. So what it will do? It will say 2 into 1 is calculated, which is 2. This 2 is written to the previous function. So 3 into 2, 6. Now 6 is given to this factorial 3. So 4 into 3, okay, 6. I get 24. Then again, this 24 is transferred here. 24 into 5, 120. 120 is written to this first function. So which is 120. So it will return 120 to the calling function. So did you understand how to give a recursion?
Yes, ma'am.
That you will be having a base case. So the base case is nothing but the breaking condition to stop the recursion or problem or smaller, right? And every recursive function should have one base case. It should have at least one base case. You can have more base cases also based on your application. And if you're having more recursive calls or if your recursion is going into an infinite recursive calls, then what happens is if it goes beyond the limit, you will be getting an error which is infinite stack. I'll also show you what is the depth of recursion in the next slides. So the next thing that you need to have in your program is to make a recursive call. Okay, so there what I'm doing, problem is divided into simple subparts. That's what I have done. 5 is divided into 4 and 4 is divided into 3 and all that. And then what we are doing, we are calling the function on the subparts. Okay, the result is obtained by combining the results of all the subparts. So this is what is called as recursion. And in your placements also, you can give this recursive problem. So you need to have a base case and then you need to have the recursive call. Why you are making the recursive call? You're making the recursive call to divide the large problem into small problem, then make a recursive call on the smaller problem. And here one very important thing is how you write the logic of your recursion. Mere case should be the dividing of your large problem into small problem should be in such a way that it will be driving you towards the base case. It should be you call is not pushing your problem into the base case. Again, it will enter into an infinite loop. So the solution has to be given very, very carefully. Understanding each and every recursive call carefully, you have to give the solution. So always your recursive call should push the iterations towards the base case. So that's what has happened in the factorial problem. Every time you make a recursive call, you're getting closer to the base case. First you have called on 5. So then you're calling on 4. So you're nearing to the base case, like which is n is equal to 1. So your solution should be in such a way that it will be pushing you towards the base case. I can have one base case or more than one base case. I can have anything. It's just an if condition. So you can have this logical connectives also and or and anything inside your function. Okay, right. technique. That's what I told you. It's an algorithm design technique to solve the problem. And what is this divide and conquer? So this divide and conquer is dividing the large problem into the smaller problem and solving it. The steps is like you need to specify the base case, then check whether the current value matches with the value of the base case. That's what we have done, right? Whether 4 is equal to 1 or 3 is equal to 1. So every time you're making this check whether the value that is passed into the recursive calls is equal to 1 or not. Okay, and if S, if the base case matches, then return the value. Else what you're doing, you're making the calls. So divide the problem into sub-problems. Call the same function on the sub-problem. That's what we are doing. Combine the results of the sub-problems. Return the results of the entire program. So this is how you need to give the solution for the recursive problem. Okay, fine. So is this clear to my class? What is recursion? So in tomorrow's class, I'll show you certain basic recursive functions like Fibonacci series, calculation of GCD, and then I move on to the next topic. So I'm closing my class now.